Don't blink, because the man sliding a diamond bracelet onto my wrist right now is the same man who tried to put me in a casket last night. That was the thought screaming through Chidi's mind as she stared into the warm, hazel eyes of her husband, Obinna. The bedroom was bathed in the soft glow of the morning sun, smelling of fresh jasmine and the vanilla latte Obinna had just brought her. He leaned in, his lips brushing against hers in a slow, lingering kiss that tasted of sweet promises and hidden venom. She didn't pull away. Instead, she deepened the kiss, wrapping her arms around his neck, playing the part of the blissfully ignorant, doting wife perfectly, even as her skin crawled with pure terror. Just 12 hours ago, she had watched through a hidden camera as this exact man precision-measured a clear sedative into her nightly tea. Hey everyone, before we dive into how a multi-million-dollar inheritance turned a dream marriage into a literal crime scene, hit that subscribe button right now, drop a like, and turn on notifications so you never miss a twist. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the very last second of this one. Chidi's world had begun unraveling 3 months prior. It started with a heavy, suffocating fog that settled over her brain every morning. She would wake up with her limbs feeling like lead, her head pounding as if a rhythmic drum was beating behind her eyes. Missed appointments, forgotten conversations, and misplaced keys became her daily reality. "Are you sure you're feeling okay, my love?" Obinna had asked one evening, his voice dripping with an agonizingly perfect imitation of spousal concern. He wrapped his large, comforting hands around her shoulders, massaging the tension away before pressing a tender kiss to the crown of her head. "You've been so forgetful lately, my love. I'm really starting to worry about the stress of managing your late father's estate. Maybe you should let me handle the property developers in Lekki this week." "I'm just so tired, Obinna," Chidi had whispered, leaning back into his chest, desperate for comfort. "I don't know what is happening to me. My mind feels like it's floating away." "It's just burnout, babe," he murmured, his lips tracing a path down her neck, sending a shiver through her that she mistakenly thought was romance. "Just rest. I've got you. I will always protect you." But the protection was a lie. The turning point came on a Tuesday afternoon when Chidi was searching the master bathroom vanity for a spare hair tie. Knocking over a velvet watch box, a small, unlabeled glass vial rolled out. Inside was a faint, milky residue. Her heart stuttered. Her father had been a pharmacist before he built his real estate empire, and he had taught her never to ignore unexplained chemicals. She didn't confront Obinna. Instead, she took the vial to a private lab, pretending it was an old prescription she needed identified. The toxicology report came back 48 hours later. Liquid zolpidem blended with a heavy neurosuppressant, a cocktail designed to mimic early-onset dementia if administered consistently over time. The realization hit her like a physical blow, knocking the wind from her lungs in the middle of a crowded shopping mall. He wasn't trying to soothe her, he was erasing her. That night, when Obinna handed her the customary evening chamomile tea, his face was a mask of pure devotion. "Drink up, sweetheart. It will help with the headaches," he said, pulling her into his lap and kissing her deeply, a passionate, distracting embrace that she now realized was meant to keep her from looking too closely at the mug. "Thank you, baby," she murmured against his lips, forcing a bright, affectionate smile. She waited until he turned his back to grab his laptop, and with a swift, practiced motion of her wrist, she switched their identical mugs. Throughout the evening, she watched with a cold, detached fascination as Obinna's speech began to slur. His eyes grew heavy, blinking slowly like a predator losing its grip on reality. "Are you okay, Obinna? You look a bit tired," she asked, her voice laced with mock innocence as she leaned over, brushing a stray lock of hair from her forehead and kissing his cheek. "Yeah, just a long day at the farm," he mumbled, shaking his head violently to clear the fog, completely unaware that he had just consumed his own poison. The next day, while Obinna was out of the house, Chidi went on the offensive. She searched their master bedroom with a forensic eye, eventually spotting a microscopic lens embedded inside the digital wall clock facing their bed. It wasn't a security camera for the house. It was pointed directly at her side of the bed. He was recording her drugged, incoherent episodes. He was building a medical case to have her declared legally incompetent. The sheer malice of the plot suffocated her. This was the man she had stood before an altar with, the man who swore to love her in sickness and in health. He didn't want a wife. He wanted her late father's multi-million-dollar real estate empire, and he was willing to hollow out her mind to get it. Panic threatened to consume her, but her father's blood ran thick in her veins. She wouldn't run. If she ran, he would find another way, a more violent way. She needed to play the game better than he did. She needed to become the perfectly broken, foggy wife he thought he was creating, while behind her vacant eyes, she orchestrated his downfall. She immediately contacted Tari, a retired state detective who had handled corporate security for her father's firm for over a decade. They met in the back of a dimly lit local cafeteria far from the upscale neighborhoods of Victoria Island. "He's not walking alone, Chidi," Tari warned as he reviewed the toxicology sheet and the photos of the hidden camera. A lawyer or a doctor has to certify the incompetence paperwork for the court to grant him full power of attorney over an estate of this magnitude. If you move too fast, they will destroy the evidence and claim you are just paranoid. You need to know exactly who is pulling the strings with him." "How do I do that without getting caught?" Chidi asked, her hands shaking as she gripped her cup of water. "We clone his devices," Tari said simply, sliding a small black USB drive across the table. "He has a spare phone he keeps in his briefcase. Plug this into his laptop while he's sleeping. If his phone syncs to the home Wi-Fi, we'll mirror everything. But Chidi, you are sleeping next to a monster. One mistake and he won't just drug you, he will eliminate you." "I know," Chidi whispered, a dangerous fire ignited beneath her fear. "But he underestimates me, and that is going to be his biggest mistake." Returning home that evening, the psychological warfare intensified. Obinna was waiting for her in the living room with a bottle of wine already open. He caught her by the waist as she walked past, pulling her flush against his chest. His hands traced the curve of her spine, and he kissed her with a desperate, sudden hunger that made her stomach violently churn. "I missed you today," he whispered into her ear, his breath hot against her skin, and she could swear that she felt the cold, triumphant smile spreading across his lips. "Don't worry, my beautiful girl. I'm right here. I'm going to take care of everything. Just trust me." "I trust you," she said, staring over his shoulder into the darkness of the hallway, knowing that the man holding her was actively preparing her digital execution. The trap was set, and the first 1,000 words of this nightmare were only the beginning of the horror awaiting them both. That night, while the rhythmic sound of Obinna's heavy breathing filled the dark master bedroom, Chidi slipped out from underneath the duvet. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She snatched the small black USB drive from her robe pocket, her fingers trembling as she crept into his home office. The glow from his laptop screen illuminated her pale face as she plugged the drive in. For 3 agonizing minutes, she watched the progress bar slowly creep forward,
mirroring his secondary phone data onto a secure cloud server. A floorboard creaked outside the door. Chidi froze, her breath catching in her throat. "What are you doing up, Chidi?" Obinna's voice sliced through the darkness, cold and sharp. She turned around slowly, letting her eyes blink heavily as she forced a confused, disoriented expression onto her face. She yanked the USB drive free, dropping it into the deep pocket of her silk robe in one seamless motion. I couldn't sleep, Obinna," she whimpered, letting her voice tremble as she stumbled slightly toward him. "My head is burning again. I came in here looking for some painkillers, but I forgot where the light switch was." Obinna's tense posture immediately softened. The suspicion in his eyes melted back into that sickeningly sweet facade of spousal devotion. He stepped into the room, wrapping his strong arms around her waist and pulling her body flush against his. "Oh, my poor baby," he murmured, kissing her forehead before sliding his lips down to press a deep, passionate kiss against her mouth. "You are getting worse, aren't you? Come back to bed. I'll rub your temples." The next morning, Chidi locked herself in the guest bathroom and opened the secure link Tari had sent her. The cloned phone data began downloading, and as she scrolled through the encrypted messages, her entire world shattered for a second time. Obinna wasn't just walking with his mother. The text messages revealed a sickening betrayal that cut deeper than any blade. "Is the pharmaceutical cocktail working? The court date for the emergency conservatorship is set for next week," one message read. It came from a contact saved under a simple initials tag, but Chidi recognized the phone number instantly. It belonged to Fumi, her absolute best friend since university, her maid of honor, the woman she trusted with her deepest secrets. "He's completely out of it by 9 p.m. every night," Obinna had replied to Fumi. "The digital clock camera is catching all the memory lapses beautifully. Once Dr. Ojo signs off on the mental incompetence certificate, the estate control defaults to me. We'll liquidate the Lekki properties immediately and move the funds to the offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Then we can finally be together openly, my love." Chidi gripped the edge of the marble sink. A choked sob escaped her throat before she violently forced it down, replacing the grief with a cold, blinding rage. Her husband and her best friend were sleeping together, plotting to hollow out her brain, steal her father's lifetime of hard work, and leave her a discarded shell in a mental institution. She immediately forwarded the message logs to Tari. "We need to move now, Tari," she typed, her thumbs shaking with fury. "They are trying to strip my rights by next week." "Patience, Chidi," Tari typed back a few minutes later. "If you expose them now, they'll hide the offshore accounts and claim the messages are forged. We need physical proof of financial fraud. Look for the physical ledger and the master keys to your father's digital trusts. Obinna must have them hidden in the house." 2 days later, the danger escalated from a psychological threat to an imminent physical execution. Chidi was pretending to nap on the living room sofa, her eyes cracked open just a millimeter when she heard Obinna speaking in hushed, urgent tones on the balcony. "She's becoming erratic, Fumi," Obinna hissed into the phone, his voice tight with panic. "Yesterday she asked me why the tea tasted metallic. She's starting to question things. If she has a moment of total clarity and changes her will or talks to her father's lawyers, we are completely ruined." "What do you want to do?" Fumi's voice came faintly through the speakerphone. "We can't wait for the court order any longer. We need a permanent solution," Obinna muttered, pacing the length of the balcony. "The house in Banana Island has an old gas line in the basement pantry. A tragic accident, a sudden leak while she's heavily sedated in bed. The insurance and the inheritance will slide right into my hands without a single legal hurdle." Chidi's blood ran completely cold. They weren't just going to lock her away anymore, they were going to burn her alive. That evening, Obinna arrived home earlier than usual, carrying a massive bouquet of red roses and a bottle of expensive champagne. His energy was manic, a terrifying contrast to the lethal plot he had discussed hours earlier. "Let's celebrate us tonight, Chidi," he whispered, dropping the flowers on the counter and pulling her roughly into his arms. He kissed her with a desperate, suffocating intensity, his tongue forcing its way past her lips as if trying to consume her entirely. "You seem so full of energy tonight, baby," she gasped out between kisses, running her fingers through his dark hair while her mind calculated every exit strategy. "I'm just happy because I know our struggles are almost over," he murmured against her neck, biting her skin softly. "Drink some champagne with me. Let's make it a night to remember." While Obinna went down to the basement to fetch the ice bucket, Chidi scrambled off the counter. She had less than 20 minutes before his nightly routine began, and she knew this might be her last night alive if she didn't find the leverage that her father had left behind. She sprinted to Obinna's study, tearing through the bottom drawers of his desk until her hand brushed against a false panel at the back of the heavy mahogany cabinet. She pried it open. Inside lay her father's old leather-bound corporate ledger, along with a hardware crypto wallet containing the master keys to the entire estate's offshore holdings. As she gripped the ledger, a loose piece of paper fell out. It was a note written in her father's distinctive, elegant handwriting. "To my dear Chidi, if you are reading this without me, it means someone has tried to break into our sanctuary. True wealth is not the gold, but the wisdom to outsmart the wolves. The ledger holds a digital trap. Use it only when the enemy thinks they have won." Before she could process the note, she heard the heavy footsteps of Obinna ascending the basement stairs. The hunt was reaching its absolute boiling point, and the final confrontation was about to explode. Chidi shoved the ledger and the hardware crypto wallet back into the secret panel, sliding the mahogany wood into place just as the study door swung open. Obinna stood in the doorway, the heavy silver ice bucket in his hands, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the room. "What are you doing in here, Chidi?" His voice dropped into a low, menacing register that sent a violent tremor down her spine. The playful, loving husband from 5 minutes ago had completely vanished. She turned around, letting her shoulders slump as she forced a wild, terrified look into her eyes. She began pulling at her hair, pitching her voice into a frantic, breathless sob. "I heard the clicking, Obinna, the clicking in the walls. They are coming to take the house. They told me in my sleep." Obinna's tense shoulders instantly relaxed. A dark, satisfied smirk flashed across his face before he quickly masked it with an expression of deep pity. He dropped the ice bucket onto a side table and rushed over, wrapping his strong arms around her trembling frame. Hey, calm down, my love. It's just the medicine taking effect. No one is coming for the house. I told you, I have everything under control." He lifted her chin, forcing her to look into his eyes, and pressed a deep, slow kiss against her lips. The taste of copper and anxiety filled her mouth, but she leaned into him, letting her head drop against his chest like a broken doll. "You need to rest, Chidi. Go upstairs. I'll bring you a special glass of warm milk to help soothe your nerves." "I'll be waiting in bed," she whispered, backing out of the room with a vacant smile. The moment she turned the corner, she sprinted down the hallway toward the basement stairs. There was no time left. Obinna was going to drug her tonight, and if she was unconscious, she would never wake up from the fire he and Fumi had planned. She opened the heavy basement door and descended into the damp, chilly darkness. Using the flashlight on her phone, she located the main gas line running into the house's central heating system. Her father had taught her basic structural plumbing when they built the Banana Island estate. With a heavy metal wrench she found on the workbench, Chidi threw her entire body weight against the primary pressure valve. She twisted it past its safety lock, intentionally forcing a digital malfunction in the automated pressure release system. This didn't release the gas immediately. Instead, it rigged the valve to trigger a massive localized pressure blowback the exact moment anyone attempted to manually ignite a spark from the external furnace line. A sudden floorboard creaked directly above her head. Chidi killed her flashlight, her heart stopping as she ducked beneath the heavy concrete stairs. "Chidi?" Obinna's voice echoed down the basement steps, accompanied by a second set of footsteps. "Are you down here?" "Look at her, Obinna," a sharp, familiar female voice hissed. It was Fumi. "She's completely lost her mind, wandering around the dark basement. We can't wait until midnight. If she breaks something down here, she'll ruin the layout. Do it now." "I have the syringe right here," Obinna replied, his voice dead and emotionless. "Go back up and prime the external lines. Once she's out, I'll drop the spark." Chidi pressed her back against the freezing concrete wall, tears of betrayal stinging her eyes in the pitch blackness. Her best friend and her husband were standing 10 feet away, casually discussing her murder. She waited until she heard Fumi's heels click back up the stairs before she made her move. As Obinna stepped further into the basement darkness, Chidi lunged from beneath the stairs. She swung the heavy iron wrench with every ounce of strength she possessed, striking him directly across the wrist. The syringe shattered against the concrete floor, liquid zolpidem spraying into the air. "What the hell?" Obinna screamed, clutching his fractured wrist as he stumbled backward into the storage racks. "You bitch, you've been faking it." "I know everything, Obinna," Chidi roared, her voice echoing off the basement walls with the power of a woman reborn. "I know about Fumi, I know about the offshore accounts, and I know about the fire." Obinna's face distorted into a mask of pure demonic rage. He lunged at her, tackled her to the ground, and pinned her down, his large hands wrapping around her throat. "You think you are smart because your father left you millions," he snarled, squeezing the air from her lungs. "You are nothing without him. By tomorrow morning, you will just be a tragic statistic, and everything your family built will belong to me." Chidi choked, her vision blurring as the oxygen left her brain. But with her remaining strength, she slammed the heavy iron wrench upward, catching him squarely beneath the jaw. Obinna groaned, his grip loosening as he crashed sideways onto the floor. Chidi scrambled to her feet, gasping for air, and sprinted up the stairs, locking the heavy basement door behind her. Before she could catch her breath, the front door burst open. Fumi stood there, holding a box of industrial matches, her eyes widening in horror as she saw Chidi standing alive and furious. "It's over, Fumi," Chidi screamed. "The police are already on their way." "You are too late," Fumi shrieked, striking a match and throwing it toward the external furnace line outside the window. But instead of a sweeping fire engulfing the house, the spark met the rigged pressure valve Chidi had altered in the basement. A loud concussive bang shattered the windows as the localized pressure blowback exploded outward, completely destroying the external furnace unit and sending a wave of dense pressure that knocked Fumi off her feet. Within minutes, the sirens of Inspector Tari's police escort wailed down the driveway. Armed officers flooded the estate, dragging a bruised and screaming Obinna out of the basement in handcuffs, while Fumi was pinned to the driveway, her face pressed against the gravel. As the officers loaded them into the back of the transport vans, Obinna spit toward the ground, staring at Chidi with venomous eyes. "You think you won?" he taunted. "The master keys to your father's digital ledger are already encrypted. Without the validation codes, you can't touch a single naira in those offshore accounts. You are broke, Chidi." Chidi walked down the steps, a cold, triumphant smile spreading across her face. She held up her father's old leather ledger, tapping the embedded digital screen on the inside cover. "You forgot who built this empire, Obinna," Chidi said, her voice dripping with ice. My father created the Ofori Attack Protocol. The moment you and Fumi tried to impute Bo's fraudulent conversion codes into the offshore account 48 hours ago, it didn't transfer the money. It triggered a digital dead man's hand. Every single piece of encrypted data, your text messages, the hidden camera footage, and your bank logs have already been automatically compiled and sent directly to international law enforcement. Your assets are frozen and your freedom is gone. Obinna's face drained of all color as the realization of his absolute defeat sank in. The police doors slammed shut, cutting off his final screams. Standing in the quiet morning light of her estate, Chidi looked out over the Lagos Lagoon. The trauma of the betrayal would take time to heal, but as she opened her father's ledger one last time, she knew she had protected his legacy. The true inheritance wasn't the millions in the bank, it was the unyielding strength and wisdom he had passed down to her to survive the wolves. If you made it to the very end of this wild story, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and drop a comment below letting me know where you are watching this video from right now. Keep your eyes open, trust your instincts, and I will see you in the next one.